Mr. Speaker.
Order. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
Item 1, resumption of debate on the President's address.
The question is that the following address in reply to the speech of the President be agreed to. We, the Parliament of the Republic of Singapore, express our thanks to the President for the speech which she delivered on behalf of the government at the opening of the second session of this Parliament. Mr. Sitoh Yih Pin.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the President's address for the second session of the 13th Parliament comes 3 years after our SG 50 year in 2015. Madam President hits the nail on its head when she pointed out in her address that the key question now, confronting the fourth generation leadership team, is what is next for Singapore? An issue that has arisen and garnered keen interest among Singaporeans is the widening class divide and income inequality in Singapore. This issue was brought to the fore by the Institute of Policy Studies' study on social capital in Singapore. It was subsequently raised by several honourable members of this House during the budget debate earlier this year. There has been much discussion in the academia, the media, in online platforms, amongst all segments of Singaporeans. So why the keen interest? Because this issue resonates with Singaporeans. It does because it cuts to the heart of the foundational values of our social compact. Values such as meritocracy, equal opportunities, and self-reliance. It makes us sit up and question these values, its relevance in the context of modern-day Singapore, and whether they have become the metaphorical sacred cows that are impossible to slaughter. Sir, I disagree, however, with detractors who attribute the widening inequality as a consequence of our existing policies. This is unfair. Public policies are made within the context of its time, and it is not reasonable to suggest that our existing policies have not served us well. Singapore as a country and Singaporeans as a citizenry have come a long way since 1965, and our policies over the years, implemented by our founding, second and third generation leaders, contributed significantly to our success. Sir, change is important. To not change is to not improve, but change must be for a purpose, especially if it is to a policy or system that has served us well. I remember not too long ago, a parliamentary colleague brought up the possibility of abolishing the PSLE examinations. It was debated. Good, valid arguments were made for and against. I did not speak then, but I managed to speak to many parents of primary school children after, and views were mixed. Some felt changes should be made, but most were not in favor of abolishing the PSLE completely. And yet, as the prevailing view that the PSLE is a high-stakes exam that has serious ramifications on our young students' future remain, the problems of stress on our young students and anxious parents will continue. But not all possible solutions require the slaughter of a sacred cow. Pilot projects that consider alternative models can be explored. There must be a careful calibration of what requires tweaks and what should be boldly changed. Sir, as Singapore grows and evolves, her context changes. New issues such as widening inequality have arisen. The more important question now is therefore not an inquest into fault, but about what needs to be done moving forward. can the next generation leadership team exercise political leadership to tweak or boldly slaughter any sacred cows when necessary? One argument against doing more to deal with widening inequality lies in the fundamental principle of one of our foundational values, meritocracy. Inherent within the concept of meritocracy is the notion that if an individual works hard enough, is determined enough, and possesses the ability to succeed, he or she will. This has worked well for Singapore for 2 to 3 generations, where many Singapore families have bettered themselves through education, hard work, greed, and determination. The argument on the other side of the spectrum, however, is this: meritocracy works well if the gap between the haves and the have-nots is closer. This was indeed the case during the days of our parents and grandparents. Now, income inequality is wider. The gap in resources available to families with higher income and those with lower income is stuck. One of the areas where the government has targeted is in the preschool arena. Kids Start is a pilot program that aims to narrow the inequality gap of young children from disadvantaged, less privileged backgrounds. In Singapore, formal education begins at primary 1. Students of different backgrounds where the perceived difference, and I say difference in inverted commas, in ability between students, such as the ability to read, write, or count, could stem from the environment of their homes and the resources of their parents instead of their true inherent abilities. And when these students are streamed and valued in our education system, sometimes quite early on in their formal education, they may then be denied the opportunity to succeed as they may, if the playing field was more level to begin with. However, we all appreciate that the issue of widening inequality in Singapore is decidedly more complex and requires more attention than just the preschool arena. Sir, I'm therefore very heartened that our 4th generation leadership team had included an emphatic statement in the President's address on how the government intends to tackle inequality. I think it bears repeating, and I shall do so briefly. And sir, I quote, "We must tackle inequality vigorously. We need to provide the right additional support to those needing it in housing, education, skills training, and employment, so that meritocracy works well. Only then can everyone do well through hard work, talent, and skills, regardless of their backgrounds." Unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, I see this as a bold shift in the policy stance of the government. It is a promise not only to create opportunities for Singaporeans to succeed, but a commitment to provide the right additional support to those who need it. It is an acknowledgement that there are Singaporeans amongst us, especially the children, who are placed at a disadvantaged starting point because of the widening inequality and the rigors of our system. I await with anticipation to the action plans that will bring this promise to fruition. Sir, the importance of addressing the issue of widening inequality cannot be emphasized enough, because deep within our social compact is a belief that as a community, regardless of race, language, or religion, we will always improve our lives together. The delta of improvement may differ, but as a meritocracy mandates, we move forward as one. Once any number of Singaporeans loses this belief, social stratification will occur and our social compact will be broken. We cannot and we must not allow Singaporeans to have a sense of resignation about their station of life, or worse, that of their children. It is the desire of every parent to see their children better themselves and lead fulfilling lives. Similarly, every generation of young Singaporeans growing up have their own set of dreams and aspirations. Their goals may differ, but the result that is hoped for is always the same: to improve themselves and achieve what they set out to do. As such, all Singaporeans, regardless of background, must believe deep in their hearts that they or their children have an equal opportunity to improve their lives and achieve their goals. So while the task of tweaks or bold changes to policies or mechanisms put in place to address inequality is crucial, of equal importance is the need to imbue and inspire the belief among Singaporeans that all Singaporeans, regardless of backgrounds, have an equal chance of achieving their dreams and aspirations. Madam President is right when she says that the fourth generation leadership team has a tough road ahead of them. The right to lead has to be earned. Trust and bonds have to be forged. But this is not the first transition of a new generation of government leaders, and I am fully confident that they will meet the challenges as well as, if not better, than previous generations have. Sir, I support the motion. Thank you.